I've wanted to make this video for a very long time. Ramattra is a very, very cool looking hero. I think a lot of people agree with that, and they believe that he is a super cool character. He was meant to be the big villain of the PvE. You know, he's like the one behind all the null sector stuff. He's meant to have this rich and deep lore that's going to span the entirety of the Overwatch story. And he does, in fact, have cool visual design and a distinctive personality. But his actual kit and the design of this hero falls very, very flat, especially in comparison to all the things I just mentioned. He's also very unhealthy for the game. So let's break it down. I'm going to go ability by ability, then I'm going to talk general playstyle things, and then kind of wrap it all up. His primary fire, probably the healthiest part of his kit is his weapon. Surprise. I really like it. I think it's fun. It's a high damage, long ranged projectile that's quite fun to use, quite unique to Ramattra. Suits him very, very, very well. I like the staff look of it. It is kind of crazy range for a poke weapon. This thing can go really, really, really far with no fall off. But because it is projectile, I don't think it's too crazy. It's pretty easy to dodge. It can be quite difficult to get the consistent poke out of it. So, it's fine. But it does do a lot of damage. And there's that perk that allows it to have the biggest spread on those like every now and then bursts, which is really, really useful. I have no problem with his primary fire, but that's it. The shield, his right click. I have quite a big problem though with his shield, right? Firstly, it doesn't really feel like an active and thoughtful ability. It's one of the very few abilities in Overwatch that feels like you just kind of use it for the sake of using it when you have it off cooldown. I don't feel on Ramattra I'm being very thoughtful whenever I use my shield. I'm just kind of placing it in front of me whenever I have it so I take less damage. Lots of abilities serve purposes and are, very, very useful and get punished for incorrect usage, whereas shield just seemingly has nothing. I think the idea of having the shield on Ramattra was to have that hybrid of poke and brawl. So he has his nemesis form, which is much more brawly, and then he was going to have this sort of pokier side with the primary fire being the long range projectile and having a shield. But I just don't think the shield works in this way. It just isn't a very interactive and fun shield, and not even that effective, while also having a ton of health and rarely ever gets broken. But at the same time, it doesn't also last long enough to get all that value, and then is on a super long cooldown. So it's a really weird ability. It's really weird. It's not completely disastrous, but it is just kind of poor and lazy design for a shield. Ravenous Vortex is a cool ability. I'm a big fan of Ravenous Vortex. It was kind of just a slop ability as well, where you kind of just throw it out there and use it for damage and whatever because you can. But they have now added the recast, which does the pull thing and activates it again, which makes it so much better. You used to just sort of use it off cooldown on people whenever and didn't really think about it too much. Just throw it at a group of people, get all the damage, boom, isn't that great? But honestly, now with the recast, it is probably one of the better parts of his kit, just because there is actually a lot more thought that has to go into the way you might want to use Ravenous Vortex, because it serves multiple purposes, so it just does feel a little better. It's still not perfect, especially in tandem with another part of his kit, which we'll get to in a moment, but it isn't that terrible. I also really like the visual design and the sound design of it all. It's a very satisfying and strong feeling ability, and I think the recast has really added a lot and made it just so much better to play with. Okay, now we're on to the real problem the real thing that's actually been a big burden for Ramattra is his nemesis form. It kind of does just suck design-wise. It is really, 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 really bad, and let's get into that, and let's get into why. First up, it is fun to punch people. It is really fun to have your big robot fists swinging in front of people and punching them. That is fun. I'm not going to ever take that away from someone. It does, low-key, feel awful that it pierces shields. I just think, I get it, but it does kind of suck. Especially someone that plays a lot of Paquita, it makes the Ramattra matchup really, really bad because your shield is basically useless. But the main issue here definitely just lies in block. I've mentioned before many times how the block does just suck. It's huge damage reduction while also gaining bonus health and armor while you're in the form. You basically become invincible by just holding down a button. You can become invincible on command and move during it. You are able to walk in and out of space just holding block and not taking any damage. It's probably one of the longest and most extreme forms of damage mitigation in the entire game. This is the reason Ramattra really sucks, is because a lot of his power comes from here. And the rest of his kit is quite bland and doesn't really work that well, but Nemesis form block is seriously just something that just doesn't function, and it's such a crazy ability to have in this game. Like, no one else has something so insanely strong, which means if Ramattra isn't very good, they have to tone down so much of this guy's kit to compensate for how powerful the block actually is. What you'll see a lot if you ever to see like a high level Ramattra play, you'll see a lot of Lucio with Ramattra just being able to speed his block out. So you're able to take a fight, get punished, but then you just speed hold block and walk out, which is really unfun to play against. It's ultimate annihilation, right? I don't know how this ult was designed, but it does make sense for Ramattra. It feels like it fits his design very well. You feel really cool and like a villain during annihilation, but we all know an ult lasting this long can be really annoying, especially in tandem with the fact that you can just sit and block the whole time, deal damage to people AoE for a stupidly long amount of time, while also taking 0 damage in block. This ult, I don't think is necessarily that bad on paper, but I think it is completely made worse by his whole entire kit being bad already. Just the way Nemesis form works, to then make that be a thing where you can have it all the time, is crazy. It is crazy. So not a great ult. Not a great ult, but to be fair, it's not a great ult because of how bad Ramattra is already. Moving on to like playstyle and just kind of how Ramattra is, just kind of general thoughts here. I feel Ramattra doesn't have a clear playstyle. This is quite a flaw in my opinion. The way I view the game, this is a flaw. Some people might like this type of thing though. I do like the difficult, the dynamic heroes. So it may seem like I'm contrasting that opinion, but the thing is, those characters have clear playstyles. I still like a clear playstyle. Tracer is a difficult, dynamic, high agency, high uptime, very thoughtful character, which is a very clear playstyle. It's not that difficult to understand what Tracer does and why she would do it, but executing on that does require a lot of time and skill and dedication. Ram's kind of just this blurry box of an all-encompassing whatever. The ability synergy, to me, is what is missing here. It sort of feels like, without Nemesis form, you kind of just have like a long-range poke weapon, a shield, and like an AoE damage thing. None of these really go hand in hand together with each other, so everything kind of just feels out of place, and it just feels slop-like. To me, it feels like a Marvel Rivals kit. Now, I know people love Marvel Rivals, and I hate, bring one game down to put the other one up, but when I played Marvel Rivals, this was the type of kit that it felt like, where it was sort of just abilities for the sake of abilities, and we weren't thinking too much about how the kit itself synergizes with itself, and that's what Ramattra is, right? You shoot things and then you use abilities when you have them, and then that's kind of how you play the game, right? You just don't think nearly as much about how these abilities interact with each other and why you are using them. And his abilities aren't punishable in the way others are. There's no big calm of like, oh, Ramattra no vortex, and then everyone pushes him. There's just not a clear punish window like other heroes. In Overwatch, if you misuse your abilities, you should be punished. That's just how the game works. Just fundamentally, you should be punished. And what happens with Ramattra is that he always has something else. He doesn't die, even if he should be punished. Think about it like this. Genji, right? Genji misses dash. He dashes. It's a bad dash. What do? You kill that guy because he doesn't have dash and he misused dash. Ramattra, he misuses what even is a misuse of his abilities? It doesn't make any sense. Even if we take it to some simpler characters like Orisa, people don't like Orisa very much and say she's a very bad design, right? But if Orisa uses Fortify for seemingly no reason, she can get punished very heavily for that. If she doesn't cycle her cooldowns properly, she gets really punished and she could die very quick because of that. Ramattra just doesn't have that. He just doesn't have that at all. And Nemesis form is such a bailout ability that it's just... what a bad kit. What a bad kit. Anyway, that's my general thoughts on Ramattra. I went over the abilities. And I think the main thing with them is the lack of ability synergy, the lack of being able to be punished, and then also, I just don't think this character is that fun. A lot of it is just sitting, doing nothing, just spamming around abilities, and then punching, and then blocking. And if that clicks for you, that clicks for you, and I'm not going to tell you what's fun and what's not fun, but for me, it's not that great. It's not that great of a design. But let me know your thoughts. What are your thoughts on Ramattra? I think he could have been so much better. I think we just had such a cool little story going with him. We had so much, villainous stuff going on. I wish that this character was way more of a staple and way better. And also because he is our only, as far as I'm aware, I can't think of a single other transformative character. We don't have any characters that can change form and get different abilities. We don't have any of those. That would be cool to get more of. So I wish our only one didn't suck. Thank you very much for watching. I like breaking down random heroes, random abilities, odds, all that kind of thing, and discussing them. So after this, you can go check out something about Roadhog, you can check something about this, blah, 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 this, all that kind of stuff. Go find yourself. Anyway, peace and love.